Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. Blood looks different on a tuxedo. It's darker, almost black, against the pristine silk, a stark violation of elegance that demands immediate attention. Julian Vane stood frozen in the hallway, his hand hovering over the keypad of the apartment door, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs as the metallic scent of iron overwhelmed the usual aroma of stale coffee and rain. The door was already ajar, splintered near the lock. Inside, the penthouse apartment, usually a battlefield of passive-aggressive notes and strewn designer clothes, was deathly silent, save for a wet, ragged wheezing coming from the sunken living room. Julian didn't think. He moved, his instincts as a former street brawler overriding his cultivated pianist's restraint, sprinting toward the source of the sound only to skid to a halt. There, slumped against the white leather sofa that he had forbidden anyone to sit on, was Silas. The man who made Julian's life a living hell of taunts and practical jokes was clutching his side, his usually arrogant grin replaced by a grimace of pure agony, while Baron, that accursed African gray parrot, paced frantically on the back of the couch, bobbing its head in a macabre dance. "Don't," Silas rasped, his voice wet, eyes struggling to focus on Julian. "Don't. Come in. Dangerous." But the warning came too late, and the secret Silas had buried under layers of sarcasm and mockery was about to be ripped open by the one creature in the room that didn't know how to lie. To understand the blood, you have to understand the hate. Or rather, the intricate, suffocating friction that existed between Julian Vane and Silas Kincaid. They were roommates by necessity, not choice. Julian, a classical pianist whose career had been derailed by a scandal that wasn't his fault, needed a place that didn't smell like mildew and despair. Silas, an enigma wrapped in Gucci and bad decisions, needed someone to pay half the rent on a sprawling city apartment he clearly couldn't afford on his consultant's salary. For 6 months they had existed in a state of Cold War. Julian was order. Silas was chaos. Julian was silence and discipline. Silas was loud music at 3 a.m. and a parade of questionable guests who looked like they carried switchblades in their boots. But the worst part wasn't the noise. It was the teasing. It was relentless, calculated. Silas knew exactly where to press to draw blood without breaking the skin. "Practicing again, maestro?" Silas would drawl, leaning against the doorframe of the music room, a half-empty wine glass dangling from his fingers. He'd watch Julian run scales, his eyes dark and unreadable. "You play with such repression. Afraid if you hit the keys too hard, you might actually feel something?" Julian would stop, his shoulders tensing. "I'm practicing technique, Silas. Something you wouldn't understand, given your life is improvised garbage." Silas would laugh, a low, throaty sound that grated on Julian's nerves for reasons he refused to analyze. "Ouch, the ice prince speaks. Careful, Jules, you'll melt if you get too heated." He would walk by, trailing a hand across Julian's shoulders, a fleeting, burning touch, before sauntering off, leaving the scent of expensive cologne and ozone in his wake. Then there was the bird, Baron. Baron was a rescue, according to Silas. A neurotic, feather-plucking African gray that hated everyone, especially Julian. The bird spent most of its day screaming obscenities or mimicking the sound of the microwave. Silas adored it. He would sit by the cage for hours, whispering to the bird in hushed tones that Julian couldn't catch, feeding it walnuts and cooing like a mother hen. "He's the only one who gets me," Silas had said once, catching Julian staring with disdain at the bird. "He's a bird, Silas. He has a brain the size of a peanut. He doesn't get you. He's mirroring your dysfunction." "Maybe," Silas had smirked, his eyes flashing with a strange, melancholic light. "Or maybe he's the only one listening." The dynamic shifted, subtly but irrevocably, on a Tuesday in November. The city was battered by a torrential downpour, the kind of rain that felt biblical, washing the grime off the neon signs of the lower districts. Julian had returned home exhausted. He had taken a job playing piano at a high-end hotel bar, a humiliation for a man who had once played Rachmaninoff at the Royal Hall, but bills were bills. His fingers ached, and his pride was bruised. A drunken patron had poured a martini into the Steinway, and the manager had blamed Julian. He walked into the apartment, soaking wet, expecting darkness. Instead, the living room was lit by the glow of the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Silas was there, but he wasn't alone. Two men in dark suits stood by the entrance. They were thick-necked, radiating the specific kind of menace that came from organized crime. Silas stood between them and the hallway leading to the bedrooms, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp as flint. "I told you," Silas was saying, his voice devoid of its usual playfulness. "The debt is being serviced. You don't come to my home. The boss is impatient, Kincaid." One of the thugs grunted. "He thinks you're distracted. Maybe playing house." "I'm not playing anything," Silas snapped. "Get out." The thug stepped forward, shoving Silas hard against the wall. A vase crashed to the floor. Julian dropped his keys. The sound cut through the tension like a gunshot. The thugs turned. Silas's head snapped up, genuine panic flooding his face. "Julian, get out!" he roared. A desperation in his voice Julian had never heard before. The thug nearest Julian sneered. "This the roommate? Pretty thing. Touch him?" Silas said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. "And I will dismantle you piece by piece, starting with your eyes." The threat was so visceral, so at odds with the cavalier playboy Julian thought he knew, that even the thug hesitated. Silas used that second. He moved with a blurred speed, grabbing the thug's wrist and twisting. There was a sickening crack, a shout of pain, and within 10 seconds, Silas had shoved both men out the door and slammed the deadbolt home. Silence descended, heavy, suffocating. Julian stood by the door, dripping water onto the hardwood. Silas stood by the broken vase, his chest heaving, nursing a bruising jaw. "What?" Julian whispered. "Was that?" Silas turned away, wiping blood from his lip. The mask slammed back into place, though it was crooked now. "Just a disagreement with the fan club, maestro. Nothing to worry your pretty little head about." "They were going to kill you," Julian said, stepping forward. "They threatened me." "Empty threats," Silas scoffed, though his hands were trembling. He walked to the liquor cabinet, pouring a drink with shaking fingers. "Go to bed, Julian. Stop lying to me," Julian shouted, the outburst surprising them both. "You act like this is all a joke. You tease me, you mock me, you play the fool, but you're in something deep." "Who are you, Silas?" Silas downed the drink, slamming the glass onto the marble counter. He looked at Julian, his eyes dark pools of exhaustion. "I'm the guy paying the rent so you can mourn your career in comfort. Leave it at that." "I'm moving out," Julian said coldly. Silas flinched. It was microscopic, a tiny tightening of the eyes, but Julian saw it. "Suit yourself," Silas said, turning his back. "Probably for the best. You're too loud anyway." That night, Julian lay in bed, unable to sleep. Through the thin walls, he heard Silas in the living room. He wasn't playing music. He was talking to Baron. The bird was making soft, clicking noises. I know. Silas's voice drifted through the wall, muffled and slurred. He was drunk. I had to scare him off, Baron. It's not safe. Not with the syndicate closing in. A pause. God. Did you see his face? He hates me. He actually hates me. A dry, bitter laugh. Better that way. If he knew, it would destroy him. He's so pure, Baron. He's like snow before the city ruins it. Julian stopped breathing, his ear pressed against the drywall. I just want to. Silas's voice cracked. I just want to touch him. Just once. Without a joke. Without a mask. Just hold him. But I can't. I'm poison, Baron. I'm just poison. Julian pulled away from the wall, his heart racing. The teasing. The insults. The ice prints. It wasn't mockery. It was a fence. Silas was building a wall to keep Julian out, to keep him safe from the darkness that followed Silas Kincaid. The next morning, the apartment was empty. A note on the counter read, "Gone for a few days. Don't wait up." 3 days passed. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Julian found himself sitting by Baron's cage. The bird watched him with intelligent, bead-like eyes. "Where is he?" Julian asked the bird, feeling foolish. "Pretty boy," Baron squawked. "Maestro. Idiot." Julian sighed. "Yes, he taught you well." "Danger?" Baron croaked suddenly, ruffling his feathers. "Run. Run." Julian frowned. "What?" "Silas. Silas." The bird bobbed its head. A chill ran down Julian's spine. He spent the day pacing, unable to practice. The revelation of the other night, the confession he had overheard, sat heavy in his chest. He realized, with a jolt of horror, that he wasn't relieved Silas was gone. He was terrified. He realized that the anger he felt toward Silas wasn't hate. It was the frustration of trying to solve a puzzle that refused to be solved. And beneath that, a gravitational pull he had been denying for months. Then came the night of the blood. The lock clicked. The door opened. Julian ran. We returned to the moment where the world tilted on its axis. Silas was bleeding out on the white leather. A gunshot wound to the abdomen. Not fatal instantly, but messy. Dangerous. "Silas!" Julian dropped to his knees, his hands hovering over the wound, trembling. Oh God, I'm calling an ambulance." "No!" Silas's hand, slick with blood, shot out and gripped Julian's wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. "No police. No hospitals. They'll find me. Finish the job." "You're dying!" Julian screamed, tears springing to his eyes. "First aid kit," Silas gritted out, his face gray. "Bathroom. Under the sink. Needle. Thread. Vodka." Julian stared at him in horror. "I am a pianist, Silas, not a field medic." "Please," Silas whispered, his eyes rolling back slightly. "Jules, please." Julian scrambled up. He found the kit. It was military grade, suspiciously well stocked. He grabbed a bottle of vodka from the bar and ran back. "Pour it," Silas commanded, biting down on a leather strap from his belt. Julian poured the alcohol over the wound. Silas screamed, a guttural sound that tore through Julian's heart. Baron, agitated by the noise, went berserk. "Silas! Silas! Hurt!" The bird shrieked, flapping its wings against the cage bars. "Quiet, Baron," Silas gasped, panting heavily. "Okay, Julian, you have to stitch it. Just close the skin." The bullet went through. "I checked." "I can't," Julian sobbed, his hands shaking violently. "My hands. I can't." "You can." Silas looked at him, his gaze locking onto Julian's. "You have the steadiest hands I know. You play Liszt, for Christ's sake. This is just adagio. Slow. Careful." Julian took a deep breath. He looked at the blood. He looked at Silas, whose life was leaking out onto the floor. He thought of the empty apartment. He thought of the silence. He threaded the needle. For 20 minutes, the only sounds were Silas's ragged breathing, the snip of scissors, and the frantic muttering of the parrot. Julian entered a trance state, the same focus he used when navigating a complex concerto. He cleaned. He stitched. He bandaged. When it was done, Silas had passed out from the pain. Julian sat back on his heels, covered in sweat and blood, his hands trembling in the aftershock. He dragged Silas, God, he was heavy, to the bedroom, maneuvering him onto the sheets. He cleaned him up as best he could, stripping off the ruined tuxedo, leaving Silas in his boxers. He placed a cool cloth on Silas's forehead. Then he collapsed into the armchair beside the bed to keep watch. Hours passed. The adrenaline faded, leaving a cold ache in his bones. In the living room, Baron started to make noise again. Julian walked out needing water. He stood by the cage. "He's okay," Julian whispered to the bird. "He's alive." Baron cocked his head. The bird's pupils dilated. It opened its beak, and Silas's voice came out. Perfectly mimicked, but stripped of all the bravado, stripped of the sarcasm. It was the voice of a man weeping in the dark. "I love him, Baron." Julian froze. The glass of water slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. The bird continued, caught in a loop of memory. "It hurts so much. I watch him play and I just want to. I want to be the keys. I want him to look at me like that. Like I'm music. Like I'm worth saving." "Shut up," Julian whispered, backing away. "Stop it. He's so beautiful it makes me sick," the bird squawked, mimicking a drunk Silas. "Julian, Julian, my Julian. If I told him, he'd look at me with disgust. I'm a criminal, Baron. He's a king." The bird shifted tones, mimicking a whisper now. "I'd burn the world down for him. You know that? If anyone touches him, I'll kill them all." Julian stood amidst the shattered glass, his breath hitching. Every tease, every maestro, every ice prince. Every time Silas had pushed him away, or invaded his space only to retreat. It wasn't a game. It was worship. A groan from the bedroom broke the spell. Julian rushed back. Silas was awake, his eyes hazy with fever and pain. He tried to sit up but collapsed back with a hiss. "You're alive," Julian said softly, standing by the bed. Silas managed a weak, crooked smile. "Disappointed." "Shut up," Julian said. But there was no bite in it. He sat on the edge of the bed. "Why didn't you go to a hospital?" "Told you," Silas wheezed. "Complicated. Occupational hazard." "You're an information broker," Julian said. It wasn't a question. He had pieced it together. The military kit. The thugs. The encryption software he'd seen on Silas's laptop. Silas's eyes widened slightly. "Smart boy. I knew you were more than just pretty fingers. Why do you do it?" "Debt," Silas said, closing his eyes. "Family debt. My father. Left a mess. I cleaned it up. But once you're in, you're in. I sell secrets to keep the wolves away." He opened his eyes, looking at Julian with sudden intensity. "That's why I wanted you out. Tonight got messy. A deal went bad. They know where I live. You have to leave, Julian. Tomorrow. Pack your bags." "No," Julian said. Silas frowned. "Did you hear me? I'm dangerous. I'm almost got you killed." "I heard you," Julian said. "I also heard Baron." Silas froze. The color drained from his face, leaving him ghostly pale. "Baron? What did the stupid bird say?" Julian leaned in. The distance between them closed. He could smell the antiseptic, the blood, and beneath it, the cedarwood scent of Silas's skin. "He talks a lot when you're not here," Julian murmured. "He mimics you. He has a very good memory." Silas swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "He repeats nonsense. TV shows. Radio." "He said," Julian whispered, his hand coming up to rest on the pillow next to Silas's head, "that you want to be the keys. That you want me to look at you like your music." Silas squeezed his eyes shut, turning his head away. A flush of humiliation crept up his neck. "Julian, please. Don't. Just let me bleed in peace. Don't mock me now. Is that what you think this is?" Julian asked. "Mockery. I know what I am," Silas rasped, refusing to look at him. "I'm the dirt under your fingernails. I'm the chaotic roommate you tolerate because you're broke. You're perfection. And I'm just the guy who ruins everything." "You teased me every day," Julian said, his voice trembling. "You made my life hell. I was trying to make you hate me." Silas snapped, finally looking back at him, eyes wet. "Because if you hated me, it would be easier when I eventually got shot in a gutter somewhere. If you hated me, I wouldn't be tempted to." "To what?" Julian challenged. "To do this," Silas breathed. But he didn't move. He couldn't. So Julian did. Julian leaned down and pressed his lips to Silas's. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was a collision. It was months of pent-up frustration, fear, and confusion crashing together. Silas stiffened for a second, shock radiating through his body, before he let out a broken sound and melted into it. His hand, shaking and weak, came up to tangle in Julian's hair, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss with a desperation that tasted of salt and iron. Julian kissed him like he played, with precision, with passion, with a demanding intensity that stripped Silas bare. He felt the heat of Silas's skin, the roughness of his stubble, the vulnerability of his open mouth. When they broke apart, both were gasping. Silas looked at Julian with wide, terrified wonder. "Why?" Silas whispered. "Because..." Julian brushed a strand of hair off Silas's damp forehead. "You have terrible taste in jokes. But you have excellent taste in roommates." Silas let out a wet laugh that turned into a cough. He winced, clutching his side. "Careful," Julian soothed, resting his hand gently over Silas's on the bandage. "You heard the bird?" Silas murmured, his eyes searching Julian's face. "All of it. Enough to know you're an idiot," Julian said fondly. "And that you think I'm the ice prince." "You are," Silas smirked weakly, the old spark returning to his eyes. "But I think I just found the thaw button." "Shut up," Julian said, leaning his forehead against Silas's. "So," Silas breathed, "what now?" "The wolves are still at the door." Julian's eyes hardened. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold resolve. He thought of the thugs. He thought of the blood on the floor. He thought of Silas, broken and bleeding, trying to send him away to safety. "Let them come," Julian said softly. "You have secrets. I have a very public profile and a lot of repressed anger. We figure it out. Together." Silas looked at him, and for the first time the mask was gone completely. There was only raw, naked hope. "Together," Silas echoed, testing the word like it was a foreign language. From the other room, Baron let out a loud, piercing wolf whistle. "And maybe," Julian added, a small smile playing on his lips, "we get the bird some therapy." Silas laughed, a genuine sound this time, and pulled Julian down for another kiss. Ignoring the pain, ignoring the danger, lost in the music they were finally making together. And that is how the maestro composed a symphony for the broker. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take control and stitch up his man's heart, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments. Would you stay with a roommate who brought the mafia to your doorstep, even if he was the love of your life? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.